All right, welcome everybody to the Transportation Policy Conference Committee. How we'll move forward today is that we will have a walkthrough of the DE there, and then we'll have some testimony, and then we'll talk amendments, and then we'll move forward from there. So thanks everybody for being here, and thanks all of the conference committee members for all their work and being here. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to be here. I'm excited to get conference committee work rolling. Do we want to have folks go around the table real quick and introduce themselves?
Yep, that would
and
be
also,
great.
You kind of jumped over something that I want to visit again. I think there was a notice that there wasn't going to be testimony. There is going to be testimony. So get ready. Run to the table if you feel so inspired. And I assume we're going to try to keep folks to a couple, 2 or 3 minutes?
Yes,
Right.
for sure.
Great.
Definitely. So if we want to start, let's go, since the House side, let's start this way. Matt, you want to introduce yourself? Yeah.
Matt Bauman, Committee Administrator, House of Representatives.
Matt Burris, House Research.
Kyle Schwab, DFL, House Caucus Research.
Frank Hornstein, Chair, Transportation, Finance, and Policy Committee, District 61A, Minneapolis.
John Petersburg, Transportation, Minority Lead.
Joe Marble, House Research for the GOP.
Nate Pasco, Senate Research for the DFL.
Dave Frazier, Senate GOP Research.
Dom Linetti, Legislative Assistant to Senator Jasinski.
Senator Jasinski, Minority Leader in the Minnesota Senate in District 19, Faribault, Otano, Sika.
Alex Will, Legislative Assistant, Senator Dibble.
Matthew Thier, Committee Administrator for Senate Transportation.
Krista Boyd, Fiscal Analyst for Senate Transportation Committee.
Tim Greenfield, Nonpartisan Counsel for the Senate Transportation Committee.
And Mr. Chair, we're missing Senator Morrison, who's the Vice Chair of the committee and conferee. She's in the Environment Committee right now. They're just now getting to their finance bill. A little late, and so she's pinned down handling amendments and the final vote on the bill. Hopefully she will be here soon.
Perfect, and we will delay any official action until she gets here to go through stuff. So we're going to start first with a walkthrough of the DE as it stands currently. So Mr. Burris and Mr. Greenfield, however you'd like to proceed with that walkthrough.
Mr. Chair and members, I'll be starting off, and this is the delete all amendment. It's coded A24-0313, and I'll just do high level. We'll trade off at a couple of points, and as always, we can go to questions if there's follow up on things. So the DE amendment starts with Article 1, which covers a variety of policy provisions. Section 1 revises the membership on the Advisory Council on Traffic Safety. This reflects the Senate language with a couple of additional, or at least one more additional member and a clarification around possible changes to a board structure. Section 2 has a compensation provision for salary studies for law enforcement officers, and this reflects the Senate position. Section 3 modifies the rules or eliminates a rule and codifies it on a accident prevention course, setting the length of the course at 4 hours. This reflects the House effective date. It was a provision in both bodies. Then I'll just pause to note that a large number of the provisions were either same or similar between House and Senate. For the most part, I won't go into the details on the technical differences, and I'm trying to do is just note spots where there was a policy difference or a House or Senate only. Otherwise, you can, I think it would be pretty safe to assume that it's identical or substantially similar language between House and Senate is what's in the DE amendment. So then moving to Section 4, this modifies the call procedures for certain rail-related incidents, how the emergency contact works. And then moving to page 6, there's a series of sections 5 through 7 that provide for a trunk highway turnback as well as an additional trunk highway route, kind of a rerouting and additional naming of trunk highway, or establishment of a trunk highway in the statutory structure. Section 8 is a Senate-only provision, and this establishes a memorial highway for Senator David Tomassoni. It's the Senator David J. Tomassoni Memorial Cross Range Expressway. Section 9 is also a memorial, and this was a Senate provision, and it establishes the Mayor Dave Smigulski Memorial Bridge. Apologies for butchering that one. Sections 10 and 11 make modifications to a couple of MnDOT contracting preference programs to up the percentage preference. Section 12 is the first of a series of sections that are spread throughout, and this deals with roadable aircraft. So the first couple of sections here in Section 12 and Section 13 go to definitions. There are several other provisions involved. At a high level, this is house-only language that establishes a motor vehicle or a type of vehicle that is regulated as a motor vehicle on public roads, is registered as a vehicle like any other passenger-type automobile, has a difference in license plate provision where a decal is used instead, and then can also operate as an aircraft and is subject to the various aeronautics regulations in airports and similar aviation-related locations. Sections 14 and 15 modify motor vehicle definitions in the chapter on vehicle registration. Section 14 on pickup trucks, Section 15 on adding teardrop trailers to the recreational vehicle definition. Section 16 is also related to that with a modification to the trailer definition. And then Section 17 sets some limitations around vendors involved with self-service kiosks, which are involved with motor vehicle registration transactions. Section 18 is another piece of the roadable aircraft provision. This is the part on decals instead of license plates, or one of the pieces of that. And then page 12, section 19 modifies a veteran service group special plate to broaden the eligibility. Section 20 is a House provision that makes a technical change on clarifying an annual appropriation. Section 21, as I'd mentioned, there are several of these, is one of the roadable aircraft provisions. This is on the vehicle registration and titling as a motor vehicle. It sets out those requirements. Section 22 sets limitations related to deputy registrars and driver's license agent appointments. These limitations are on the third-party information technology vendor that dealers would use. And then section 23 is a House-only provision on data sharing involving leased motor vehicles. And this does, in the DE amendment, have a change to broaden the data sharing authority to motor vehicles more generally, rather than just passenger automobiles. Section 24 provides for foreign passports to be used as a document, and this has the Senate effective date of day following final enactment. And then on page 15, section 25 modifies towing restrictions involving when a vehicle has unpaid parking tickets. Section 26, as well as section 27, make definition changes that are again related to roadable aircraft. Section 28 has a definition of non-divisible load, and this goes along with a later section in the DE amendment. And this uses the House language, which has some technical revisions in comparison to the Senate language. Section 29 defines roadable aircraft. Section 30 through 33 relate to crash reporting. This is a combination of House and Senate provisions, and then that includes some language that was in on the Senate side, clarifying a couple of aspects around use of terms and definitions, and then some House language as well, particularly on the, or one of the aspects was on oh, that was later, sorry. The House section was section 30, I believe. Jumping then to page 20, section 34 makes modifications around U-turns and driving rules related to reduced conflict intersections. Section 35 is one of a few sections that are again scattered throughout that modify the name of an endorsement to be a motorcycle endorsement, which would refer to 2- and 3-wheeled vehicles when endorsement is required. Section 36 makes a couple of modifications related to safety zones to eliminate the safety zones concept that's largely obsolete. And this section includes House language. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a different section. My apologies. There's a couple other safety zone provisions that are elsewhere in the DE amendment. Section 37 makes a modification to defining a separated roadway. This includes the safety zone, removing the safety zone term, but also updating the types of separation in the phrasing and terminology. Section 38 codifies what was a temporary provision allowing for supplemental warning systems on school buses and make some modifications to the requirements around that. That was a Senate-only provision. And then Section 39 allows for ground lights on motorcycles in some circumstances. This was also Senate-only. Following that, there are a series of sections 40 through 43, that define terms and set requirements that are, or revised requirements around child passenger restraint systems. And this continues until page 26. So there's a series of cross-reference changes, requirements for use of the restraints based on various characteristics such as age and the height and weight limits of the individual being transported, and then some technical changes that go along with the restructuring. Section 44 on page 26 of the DE is another piece of the rotable aircraft. This goes along with the license plate requirements, or non-requirement of a license plate, if you will, for rotable aircraft. And then section 45 is the other piece of the divisible load provisions that lays out the substantive requirements for when a load is required to be broken down, or when a special permit could be sought for a load. And then that brings us to section 46 regarding implements of husbandry. And Mr. Greenfield is going to speak to the modifications that are in the DE for that.
Mr. Chair and members of the conference committee, Mr. Burris is correct that there were some modifications to the driving operation rules language that was in both the House and Senate bill, but and with a fresh set of eyes, I made some technical rewrites to the underlying section pertaining to when an implement of husbandry may be operated or towed to the left of the center of the roadway. The same requirements do apply, but they just make more grammatical sense. And of note, in the clause 1, the two sub-Roman numeral references, those specify specifically that the implement must cross the center line for as brief a period of time as possible to avoid the obstacle, and the implement returns to the right half of the roadway immediately after passing the obstacle. This was a slight language difference than what the House has in their provision, so it is carried forward from the Senate, but clarified in a more easy to read and technically proficient way. Section 47 is a Senate-only provision that pertains to sewage septic tank trucks being able to haul overweights, weights that are over the specified limit during certain specified emergencies. Section 48 is the authorization for a special sugar beet hauling vehicle permit in certain areas near the North Dakota border. Section 49 on page 29 is the second section as part of the sewage septic tank overweight authorization permit. Section 50 on page 30 is, as Mr. Burris referenced, some technical changes to the motorcycle endorsement on a driver's license or on a driver's license. This provision, I believe, is adopting House technical languages. So there was a minor technical difference between the House and the Senate, and the House language is incorporated in the delete everything. Section 51 on page 31 are the operational requirements for a roadable aircraft. This specifies certain flying operations and road operations for the vehicle and when it may be considered an airplane versus when it may be considered a vehicle on the road. Section 52 on page 32 is a provision from that is in both the House and the Senate that pertains to the invalidation of a driver's license. This removes and repeals the requirement that the officer physically clip the credential. Section 53 on page 33 is another definition clarification to provide that a roadable aircraft is not a motorcycle. Section 54 on page 33 and Section 55 are two provisions that pertain to the definition of a non-compliant license. There were some minor technical differences between the House and the Senate language is incorporated in the delete everything. Section 56 is the same provision from both House and Senate that pertains to the definition of a state to include a U.S. military base located on foreign soil. Section 57 is another provision pertaining to the motorcycle endorsement. Section 58 on page 34 is clarification and some technical changes to the contents of an application. This language is carried in both the House and the Senate. I believe there were some minor technical differences between the body, and I believe beginning on section 53 through 58, I'm sorry, so section 58 as well as section 59, section 60, and all the way to section, apologize, there's a lot of sections, 65 beginning, or 64 beginning on page 51 are all part of the underlying DVS policy bill that involve the codification of certain identity and residence documentation requirements for purposes of a driver's license or identification card. So it looks extensive, but essentially it is moving and what is currently into rules into statute, and there were minor differences between the bodies that have been picked up throughout these sections. Section 65 on page 51 is permitting the veterans, expanding the number of eligible people for a veteran's designation on a driver's license or identification card to include honorably discharged members of a National Guard. Section 66 is a technical change to the tribal identification card as part of the aforementioned codification of certain identity documentation rules. Section 67 is a House-only provision that pertains to caretaker information on a driver's license, instruction permit, or identification card to repeal the limit of only up to 3 individuals receiving, being designated on the electronic record. Section 68 is a provision that is again, is a Senate-only provision, Senate File 4823, that pertains to the TSA Clear Registered Traveler Program that authorizes the Division of Driver and Vehicle Services to perform identity verification as part of requirements for that program. Section 69 on page 54 is additional technical changes as a result of the codification for identity documentation. Section 70 is a waiver that pertains to the motorcycle endorsement, so as part of the other technical changes described by Mr. Burris pertaining to a motorcycle endorsement on a driver's license. Section 71 is another endorsement classification change. Section 72 on page 56 is a hybrid of House and Senate language pertaining to road test examination reporting. The frequency of the report from the House of requiring a report on January 15th and July 15th of each year is included as the frequency of the reports required by the department, but the contents of the report is Senate language. And of note, the effective date on page 57, line 26 is January 1, 2025 to make the first report due not until January 15th of 2025, as opposed to requiring this on July 15th when the bill would be default effective on August 1. Section 73 is a is a technical change pertaining to a limited license pertaining to criminal vehicular operation. There is a policy difference between the House and Senate, and the House language did prevail, or was incorporated into the A24 delete 0313 delete everything amendment. The House set certain one-year waiting periods for limited licenses after criminal vehicular operation in various circumstances, and disallows the license under various circumstances for certain types of criminal vehicular homicide. Section 76 is the same provision for the House and Senate pertaining to online driver's education. Section 77 is a same provision pertaining to the transportation, highway performance, resilience, sustainability measures. Section 78 on page 61 is a provision that pertains to the Safe Routes to Schools program. That's the same in both bodies. Section 79 on page 61 is a House-only provision pertaining to the Transportation Facilities Capital Program. Section 80 on page 62 and Section 81 on page 63 pertain to MnDOT's responsibilities and powers to carry out promotional activities for passenger rail activities. Section 82, beginning on page 63 through section 88 that ends on page 70 are House-only provisions that pertain to modifications for excavation notice system, the excavation notice system known as Gopher State One Call. There are a variety of changes, but the entirety of the House language was carried forward into the Delete Everything Amendment. Section 89 and 90 are Senate-only provisions that pertain to certain rail clearances. Section 91 on page 72 is a Senate-only provision that pertains to the national emergency, to when a declared national emergency occurs, the hours of service for the transportation of certain fuel products. Section 92 on page 72 is a provision that is a cross-reference and a conforming change to the next section on section 93 on page 73 that expands the ability of individuals 18 to 21 to transport certain petroleum products rather than under current law where they may be prohibited to transport certain aggregated individual containers. Section 94 is a definitional change, adding the definition of roadable aircraft to the aeronautics chapter of law. And Section 95 is a Laws 2023 provision that my colleague, Mr. Burris, will pick up from here.
Mr. Chair and members, the following sections make modifications to the transportation legislation, finance legislation enacted last year. The first of these, Section 95, revises an appropriation for disaster support, so it broadens how the funds can be used. That language is found on page 76. Section 96, also on page 76, modifies the location and a little bit of uses of an appropriation for US Highway 52. Section 97, starting on page 76 as well, modifies an appropriation that was for a township. That's to change some of the procedures around the allocation of the funds and the purposes, uses to which the dollars can be put. And then Section 98 revises one of the appropriations that was made from trunk highway bond proceeds in last year's transportation finance bill. And this references the Transportation Facilities Capital Program that Mr. Greenfield had outlined that's earlier in the article of this DE amendment. Section 99, along with the following couple of sections, sections 100 and 101 and 102, also make modifications to last year appropriations so that the funds are not established as grants, but rather go to MnDOT for administering the dollars, as well as eliminating one of the requirements around availability of the funds. And then on page 79 of the DE amendment, section 103 was a house-only provision that directs MnDOT to use the latest federal manual in speed studies until the equivalent MnDOT manual is updated, or those portions are updated. Section 104 provides for limited licensing agents in some circumstances to be able to seek to become full service providers who provide both deputy registrar and licensing type services. Section 105 was a house-only provision and directs planning by the State Agricultural Society on state fair transportation. And then section 106 contains a number of repealers. These are, for the most part, related to some of the provisions outlined previously. On paragraph A, eliminating references and the concept of the safety zone. There's also an elimination of requirements to provide social security number in application for a real ID compliant license. There's an elimination of a negligence provision in civil actions related to underground facilities that goes along with the Gopher State One Call set of provisions. And then a age limitation on certain petroleum transport is also repealed, and that's being replaced with something that's substantively similar and broadened requirements. Paragraph B contains repeal of some statutory provisions as part of the driver's license and identification documentation requirements that are being centralized in the bill. And then paragraph C eliminates an administrative rule on hours of instruction for third-party testers in commercial driver's license training. Finally, paragraph D eliminates a accident prevention course administrative rule, which is replaced by the statutory language. And then, Mr. Chair and members, Article 2 contains a number of provisions that the Department of Transportation had proposed related to Greater Minnesota Transit. The first of these are a series of changes to definitions, and I'll just go over this at a high level. The second basic change is to establish a new type of service class. The article also contains modifications to financial assistance procedures, a revision to a report. It eliminates rules and rulemaking authority, and then has a repealer that also is part of the elimination of the rules and some terms that are also removed. And that, Mr. Chair, is an overview of the DE amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burris and Mr. Greenfield. I appreciate it. Now we will take testimony, so I'm not sure if anybody has things they'd like to say about the bill because it's glorious and nearly perfect, so we're there. Is that all right? Representative Petersburg.
Can I just ask one quick question? In regards to the roadable aircraft, as Chair Hornstein says, there's an awful lot in here about that. But my question is, did we clarify whether or not this is classified as a motorcycle or not in regards to driver's license endorsement?
Thank you, Mr. Representative Petersburg. Senator Dibble and I were commenting on the fact that it is like half the bill as well. So we appreciate all of your work on the roadable aircraft. Mr. Burris.
Mr. Chair, Representative Petersburg, a motorcycle endorsement is not required under this language, and that was what was revised in the House language as it moved through the process.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we go into testimony? All right. Seeing none. Representative Senator Jasinski, sorry about that.
On the section, well, it's R59, the excavator's notice system. Can we have someone, we haven't really heard that language. Do we have anyone to testify to make sure there's peace in the valley and the stakeholders are okay with that? We haven't heard that in the Senate, so I just want to see if there's anybody who can comment on that just to make sure we have agreement or
Yep, that
peace
would be
in the
great.
valley.
Thank you.
And, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Senator Dibble.
As Ms. Pissick makes her way up, of course, we want to hear that, there's a proverbial, broadly shared agreement, but if you could also, just for the benefit, for the good of the order, let us know what all the elements are that are carried. I mean, I know we just had the walkthrough, but maybe in more kind of civilian language, kind of what the key elements are, and of course, an indication of broad agreement. Thanks.
Thank you. State your name for the record and please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Sarah Pasick, and so I'm representing AGC, the Associated General Contractors, and there are 400-plus members that include general contractors, specialty contractors, affiliated businesses working in highway, heavy, and commercial construction. So we first want to thank you very much for including the provisions and the changes to the Chapter 216D, which is the utility locating and underground excavation notice system. And yes, there is agreement after many, many meetings. I'm trying to look around and see if lots of those folks are in the room, but we met with Office of Pipeline Safety, MinOps, quite a few times, Gopher State One Call, and then all of the utilities, large and small across the state, cable, I think anybody that was interested, locating companies, anybody that was interested, we talked to and worked through language. There was many changes, many versions of what is in the bill today, which was adopted on the House floor on a voice vote with, actually no discussion because it has been agreed to. I don't have the provisions, I didn't bring them up in front of me, but I talked about it so many times, I can tell you, that what it does is it works to increase communication during a locate process. So there's things such as adding a definition of locate to statute, definition of locate period. We change, right now, current law says that you have to locate within 48 hours. We add a little bit of time to that to say not including the day of notice, which was something requested by a lot of folks. We add provisions relating to both the pre-construction meeting and the construction meeting, which are aimed at improving communication. So what is the length of the project? What is the exact location of the project? How will that be done so that there is a better understanding of exactly what needs to be marked, when it needs to be marked, and by who? We included a provision about having a company's name on flags, which from the excavator's point of view, sometimes you hit something and you're not sure exactly whose line it is, especially on telecommunications a little bit more. So that was an important provision. We included a big section that originated with MinOps about construction meetings and how that happens. There's a provision in the bill that will require new utilities installed after January 1, 2026 for most utilities, and then a later date, another extra year for smaller utilities. The new utilities have to be marked with GIS. The location needs to be marked with GIS, which is a really big improvement. Our contractors said it might not improve in their excavating in their lifetime, but going forward, it'll be a big improvement. So that's only for newly installed utilities or facilities, or newly abandoned if the ground is open at the time. I think those are the major provisions that were included and changed, but happy to answer any questions. And like I said, it was a pretty collaborative process.
Thank you so much. Senator Jasinski, any follow-up?
Nope, thank you.
Any further questions from folks? Okay, is there anybody else that would like to testify?
I just want to say thank you again, and we really appreciate this being in there.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody that has anything they'd like to testify about the bill? And if not, we'll recess until Senator Morrison arrives. All right, seeing none, we'll be in recess. Thank you.